And political correspondent Mark Simpkin joins us now from the tally room. Mark, the polls suggest it is going to be very close. You've been speaking to senior people in both parties today. What are they telling you?
Well, the senior people in both parties seem to agree that it is a given that Labor is going to lose some skin, lose some paint, lose some seats. Will it lose government? Well, coalition sources say Tony Abbott's likely to pick up between 6 and 10 seats, which wouldn't be enough to win power. Labor sources say don't bet on that. Their polling suggests it is much tighter, that Labor could lose, or indeed there could be a hung parliament. Now, of course, there is some expectations management going on here. Both parties want to be the underdog, particularly Labor, that is convinced that if people think Labor's going to win, then Labor will lose because there would be a protest vote. As one source put it, when Julia Gillard was in front, Labor's internal polling collapsed. When Tony Abbott was in front, Labor was able to claw its way back.
It does seem very volatile. Why is that?
Well, there are a lot of seats in play, nearly 20 seats where the margin is 1% or lower, and there are a lot of voters undecided. As one source put it, people want to give Labor a whack, but they're not sure if they want to elect Tony Abbott. As another source suggested, 10% of voters have not decided who to vote for yet. So when that flows through to individual seats, and you have to look at individual seats, not the national numbers here, it really is all over the place. Some seats in New South Wales, for example, you've got a seat like Lindsay, which is held by the Labor Party by a 6.3% margin. Labor is increasingly nervous about holding that seat, but increasingly comfortable about winning a seat like Robertson, which has a wafer-thin 0.1% margin. So it's very confused, very scrappy, very patchy. And to try and sort through some of that, I spoke to both of the leaders a short time ago, starting with Tony Abbott, who's in Sydney tonight. Tony Abbott, you accuse the government of desperate negativity, but your whole campaign's been based around stopping things. Votes, taxes, debt, waste. That's hardly visionary, is it?
Look, I'm determined to fix up the mess that this government has created. And that means that we've got to end the waste, we've got to pay back the debt, we've got to stop the big new taxes, and we've got to stop the votes. Now, the only way to do all that is to change the government, and the only way to change the government is to change your local Labor Member of Parliament.
Obviously, circumstances can change and someone's opinions can change, but in the space of a relatively short period, less than a year, you were for an ETS until you were against it. You were against paid parental leave until you were for it. You were for 2 more debates until you were for no more debates, until you were for 1 more debate. How can the public be sure that the Tony Abbott they wake up to after the election is the real Tony Abbott and that you won't change your mind again?
Well, you know, I've always been upfront and on the record. When it comes to the Prime Minister, we only know her true views through leaks. We know through leaks orchestrated by people close to Kevin Rudd that she wasn't really in favour of paid parental leave, and she wasn't really in favour of an increase to the pension. With me, what you see is what you get.
As people are going into the booth to cast their vote tomorrow, what visual image, not slogan, what visual image would you like them to have in their mind?
Well, I would like them to have in their minds an image of a better Australia. And we can have a better Australia if we get rid of a bad government. This government has broken promises, it's wasted money, and it's clobbered our most successful industry with a great big new tax. And again, the only way to fix all of that is to change the government.
Tony Abbott, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Julia Gillard will obviously have to get to Melbourne at some stage to vote tomorrow, but now she is also in Sydney, and I spoke to the Prime Minister a short time ago. Julia Gillard, you say you have a positive message for Australia, but just this morning you called Tony Abbott a real risk at least 55 times. What does it say that the final pitch is all about just don't vote for the other guy?
It says that the election is a real choice and there's a real contest in a tough, tight election. I do have a positive plan for the nation's future, a positive plan for jobs, to keep investing in skills and apprenticeships, in trade training centres, in giving our young people a chance, a positive plan to train more doctors and nurses and invest in our hospitals, build GP super clinics and provide a GP after-hours hotline. And of course I've got a positive plan to build the national broadband network so we don't export jobs overseas to countries with better technology. But it's right to point out to Australians the election is a choice. There is a real risk Mr Abbott will be Prime Minister. He will return work choices to this country and he has announced plans to cut funding for schools and cut funding for health.
But if Tony Abbott is such a risk, as you say, and the choice is so stark, as you say, why is it so close, as you say? Is that an admission you have failed to sell your message to the electorate?
Well, my eyes are on tomorrow and the choice Australians have to make when they walk into their polling places tomorrow. What their vote matters for is their jobs, is the schools that their children go to, the healthcare that they use, getting the technology of the future, the national broadband network. I don't want to see Australians risk a return to work choices and see cuts in schools and in health because Mr Abbott is pledging cuts in this campaign. $1 billion out of apprenticeships, $1 billion out of our pharmaceutical benefit scheme, meaning more expensive medicines. And of course he's also promising a tax on groceries so prices go up.
As voters are preparing to vote tomorrow, what image, visual image, would you like them to have in their head? Not a slogan, but what sort of image would you want them to be thinking about?
I'd like them to have in their heads a vision of the kind of society they want to be a part of. I'm sure that vision will include a job with decent working conditions, not work choices, a great school for their child, decent healthcare and access to the technology of the future. That's the kind of Australia I want to see.
Julie Gillard, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it is telling that both leaders are in Sydney tonight. New South Wales will be absolutely crucial to the outcome of this election, with as many as 7 seats in play, including Bennelong, which is a highly symbolic prize given it was John Howard's old seat. Back to you, Juanita.
Thanks, Mark. Political correspondent Mark